Hi everyone, it's Webby and welcome back to another video. Have you noticed how many small SUVs there are on the roads today? Every manufacturer seems to be making one. Mazda, Hyundai, Kia, Toyota, Volkswagen, Ford. All the big players are getting into the small SUV market. And that's because it's probably one of the biggest growing sectors in the car market these days. And today I'm going to be showing you around the 2021 Hyundai Kona N-Line. So this is the new updated Kona for 2021. So I'm going to show you around some of the updates to the car, some of the spec changes. So this top of the line N-Line Premium model has basically got everything as standard. There's nothing you can add to it, which is probably just as well, because this is $46,000. $46,000 for a small SUV. That's an awful lot of money. You can get a medium-sized SUV kind of mid-range spec for similar sort of money. So is it worth it? Let's find out. So this N-Line version is the sporty model in the Kona range. You've got your normal stuff like Active and Elite, and then you've got the Highlander, which is the top of the range. But this sporty N-Line Premium is equivalent in terms of spec to the Highlander, but obviously with a more sporty theme to it. So let's have a look around the N-Line and point out some of the sort of different bits and pieces that you get on this over the regular ones. The front of the car is quite an aggressive sporty look. It's all fully colour coded, which sets it apart from the standard models in the Kona range, which are either black plastic or like a silver finish to the lower sections of the front bumper. You've got these fake air vents just at the front of the bonnet here. Would be quite nice if there was actually air vents there and there was a purpose to them, particularly with this turbocharged engine, but it's still quite a nice styling cue. I do quite like these sort of separate headlights, where the daytime running lamps are separate to the actual headlights themselves. It's quite a sort of strong, bold look. And then the colour-coded theme comes around to the side of the car, where the wheel arch is also colour-coded. Again, on lower models, they're just black plastic. So you can definitely tell the difference, and you know that this is the sporty model, basically. Coming around to the side of the car, we've got standard 18-inch alloy wheels, which for a small car, you'd think it would give it a sort of fairly firm ride. But actually it's pretty compliant when you're driving along, so it doesn't affect it too much. But it actually looks really good, I think. Again, the colour coding theme continues down the bottoms of the doors, body colour as opposed to black plastic again. This particular car, you can have a choice on the N-Line Premium of either having a sunroof or this black painted roof. I actually quite like the look of this, sort of like with the two-tone red and black. I think it's quite a sporty look, so it's a big tick from me. And that includes the door mirrors as well as the roof get painted black. Standard features on this car are fantastic. A lot of the stuff is obviously on the inside, which I'll talk about when we get inside the car. But keyless entry is standard, but then on a car costing 46 grand, you'd hope it would be, to be fair. The styling at the back of the car is equally as impressive as the front. Again, I do like these separate sort of tail light units. It sort of gives the car quite a tall look at the back. It sort of spreads everything out a little bit. And this massive great rear diffuser at the bottom of the car really tells you this is the sports model. And you've also got the twin exhaust, which is quite sort of sporty looking as well. Overall, I actually think this is a really good looking car. And you've also got a slightly extended spoiler at the back as well. Another cue that tells you this is the sports model. Space in the boot of the Kona is a rather generous 374 litres of carrying capacity, which is about the same as a mid-sized family hatchback. But you can fold the seats down, obviously, and increase that to 1,156 litres, which then makes it really useful. Now, when we get to what's powering the Kona N-Line, you start to see where some of that money goes. Under the bonnet, we've got a 1.6 litre turbocharged 4-cylinder petrol engine, which produces 146 kilowatt and 265 newton meters of torque. That's connected to a 7-speed dual clutch transmission, and it puts the power to the road by all 4 wheels. So this is an all-wheel drive model. which is something of a rarity in this class because most of the other cars are just front wheel drive. So now it starts to make a little bit of sense as to why you're spending a little bit more money on the Kona. Fuel economy is rated at 6.9 litres per 100 kilometres for this N-Line Premium model, and in the week I've been using it I've got 8.1. So it is a little bit more than the manufacturer suggests, but that goes for every car in the market these days. I don't think I've ever hit the exact figure that a manufacturer suggests a car should get. And a lot of my driving has been stop-start around town, sort of just going to and from work. So I don't think 8.1 is necessarily too bad, but you know, yeah, it could be a lot worse. So that's a bit about the outside done. Let's have a look inside the Kona now, because that's where a lot of the money goes as well. This thing is packed full of features and equipment and technology. So yeah, let's jump inside and I can show you everything inside as well. So as soon as we open the door, we're greeted by this really nice leather interior, super comfortable sport seats in the front for the driver and the passenger, which are actually electrically operated both sides. The driver gains electric lumbar support as well, and then we've also got an 8-speaker Harman Kardon sound system, which is really nice. Coming over to the dash, we've got this nice digital display in front of the driver, and also a head-up display there as well, which is very nice at this sort of price point. Coming over to the centre of the dash, we've got this 10.25-inch widescreen display. That houses your satellite navigation, your Apple CarPlay, your Android Auto, the usual sort of stuff. Coming further down, we've then got the controls for the single zone climate control. And then just below that, behind the gear stick, so you can see we've got a couple of 12-volt sockets, a USB-A connector there as well. And in that sort of big mat at the bottom is actually a wireless charging pad. So for anybody who's got a smartphone with wireless charging, you can pop that in there and charge whilst you're driving along. So the buttons that we've got next to the gear selector, we've actually got heated and ventilated front seats, which is quite nice, particularly on a 40-degree day here in Australia. That is a very handy inclusion. But on the cold mornings, we've actually got a heated steering wheel. I did try that out one day this week and it's actually really, really nice. On the other side of things, you can just have the usual button where you turn off your parking sensors and then choose which view you want from your cameras. We've then also got a drive mode selection button. So as we twist the drive mode button, you can see you've got 4 different drive modes there. Economy is obviously going to give you the best fuel consumption figures, whereas normal is kind of your everyday sort of day-to-day journeys. This is actually one of my favourite bits, sport mode, when it changes to red. I think that's quite a cool little graphic. That obviously holds onto your gears longer before it changes up and gives you a bit more response from the accelerator pedal as well. The smart mode is basically a system where it actually learns your driving style, which I've been using quite a lot because I like the way that it can adjust as you're driving, which is quite cool. Jumping aboard the Kona N-Line Premium, and that word premium sort of does sort of ring home. You've got these really nice sports leather seats, which have got lumbar support, electric adjustment on the driver's side, plus also electric adjustment on the passenger side as well. Something that's really rare on a small car. You've got a beautiful leather steering wheel in front of you. You've got the digital display for the speedo rev counter, and then all your adjustments for your settings and trip computers and that type of thing. Now, being a small SUV, you do lose a little bit of space in the back of the car. I'm only 5'6". The front seat is in my driving position. I could fit behind myself, but if I had someone that was a bit taller, sort of 6 foot or something, they might struggle a little bit in the back here. Headroom isn't too bad. There's a couple of 2 or 3 inches there, which isn't too bad. Visibility is actually quite nice. There's a lot of sort of glass area in this car, so you don't feel claustrophobic when you're sat in the back. Unfortunately, we don't get rear air vents. But then I suppose because the cabin isn't that big, you could argue that the air conditioning will come through to the back pretty easily anyway. But there is a USB charging point down there for rear passengers, which is nice to see. We do get the obligatory fold down armrest with a couple of cup holders. There's also fixed mounting points for child seats on the 2 outer seats as well. So you've got kind of the basics covered, so it's not too bad back here. And one feature that I really didn't expect to see in the back of a small SUV is heated rear seats. Only for the outside 2 passengers, but even so, heated rear seats in a small SUV. I'm starting to see why this thing's 46 grand now. All the tech and the gadgets and everything that are standard on this car, you actually have to pay on other manufacturers or not be able to get those things. I mean, how many cars do you see with heated rear seats? Very, very few, particularly at this price point. So actually it is starting to make a bit of sense as to why this car, you know, is $46,000 on the road. So let's take the Kona N-Line Premium for a drive. And I'll talk you through some of the things I like and some of the things that slightly frustrate me on this car. So yeah, let's get going. So first things when you start driving, it's actually a very easy car to drive. Kind of what you'd expect really. The steering's nice and light but direct. You know exactly sort of where the front wheels are going when you turn the steering wheel. Visibility is really good, which is quite important. One of the reasons people buy small SUVs these days is its visibility. I do like the slightly raised driving position as well. It's not quite as high as a full-size SUV, but it is a little bit bigger than say an i30 hatch, which would obviously sit a little bit lower to the ground. The digital display in front of you is nice and clear and easy to read. You don't have to sort of take your eyes off the road too much. But then you also can use the head-up display as well, because that will give you things like obviously what speed you're doing. It also picks up the traffic signs as you're driving along, which is a nice touch. Safety equipment is obviously well catered for, as you'd expect for a modern car these days. Autonomous braking, adaptive cruise control, blind spot monitor, parking sensors, lane keeping aid, all the standard stuff is there, which is good to see. Now coming back to that lane keeping aid, that's one of my frustrations with this car. It's so sensitive that it's almost like constantly adjusting the steering wheel as you're driving along. And to turn it off, you have to go into the menus on the sat-nav screen. Now it's not necessarily an issue to have to go into the settings on the sat-nav screen to turn off the lane keeping aid, except you have to do it every time you get in the car, which I do find quite frustrating. It would be nice if you could just turn it off and that was it. On the sat-nav screen, you've actually got driver profile settings. So you can actually have like a couple of different drivers and, you know, save their sort of preferences in terms of radio stations or different bits and pieces like that. It would be nice if you could do that for the safety settings as well. So if you didn't want the lane keeping aid to come on every time you get in the car, you could save it in your settings and turn it off and it wouldn't be there. Maybe I just haven't found a way to do it, but to me that would be perfect, because yeah, it is a little bit too sensitive for my liking. I do like the size of the sat-nav screen though. Some people sort of think it looks too big sat there on the dashboard, but personally I like the fact that it's big. You haven't got to really sort of take your eyes off the road too much whilst you're driving to sort of look at what's on the screen. This N-Line Premium's got a black headlining, which looks quite nice from a sporty point of view, but it does make the interior feel quite dark. So personally I'd probably choose the sunroof option rather than the black roof, just because it lets a little bit more light into the cabin that way. Now coming to the actual performance of this car, as I said earlier, it's got 146 kilowatt, which for a small car like this is actually a decent amount of power. My frustrations with the way it drives, I mean it drives really nicely, but the way in which it actually delivers the power, the turbo doesn't really wake up until you get over 2,000 revs. But around town it's trying to get into the highest gear possible to save fuel. So like 60 k's an hour, you're in 6th gear to try and keep the revs below the 2,000 mark. But if you suddenly need to overtake or get out of trouble, when you put your foot down, it takes a couple of seconds for the engine to think, you want to do something different, let's just drop a gear or two. And then when it does that, it puts it straight into that area where the turbo sort of comes alive. And then it's like old-fashioned sort of turbo. It's got like almost a bit of turbo lag before it suddenly picks up and throws you back in your seat. So it takes a little bit of getting used to. And the more I've driven the car, the more I've kind of adjusted my driving style to sort of suit. But that's why I tend to use the smart mode on that driving mode I was talking about earlier, because it does tend to learn what you're doing. So it's probably the best of both worlds in terms of which driving mode is the best one to use. Because yeah, if you get caught out with the turbo and you've got to wait for it to hit 2,000 revs, it can be a bit sort of I guess it makes for a bit of a jolty ride sometimes if you're not expecting the turbo to suddenly kick in. But when it does kick in, yeah, you can feel that 146 kilowatt. It makes for some really rapid progress. It's quite impressive. My other sort of slight disappointment is with the dual clutch gearbox. I'm actually a big fan of dual clutch gearboxes. I love them. I'd almost prefer them over a standard torque converter. But it almost feels like it's a single clutch gearbox, not a dual clutch. Because when it changes gear, you get a little bit of hesitation. So yeah, I don't know, it just feels a little bit kind of, it could be a bit better. Whether that's something that can be changed in a software update, I'm not too sure. Because I've driven lots of other dual clutch gearboxes and the gear changes are really smooth and, they act like a DSG or a dual clutch gearbox should be. So yeah, I think with a little bit of refinement and maybe a bit of a software update, the engine and gearbox could be absolutely superb. It just takes a little bit of learning from your driving style to get the best out of it. Driving along on the freeway, it's actually really quiet inside. There's a little bit of wind noise today, but yeah, the trees are swaying like they're going to come out of the ground any second, so it's not too surprising. But yeah, it's nice and comfortable. You've got plenty of visibility ahead of you. It is a nice car to drive. And interestingly, since picking this up a week ago, I've all of a sudden seen lots of Hyundai Konas on the road. I know it's one of those things you suddenly become, subconsciously aware that you're looking for a particular car. But yeah, they seem to be everywhere. And it's not surprising because it is a good little package. They've got sort of models at all different price points throughout the range, depending on, maybe what features you want or how much you want to spend. So you can understand why this is quite a popular little car for Hyundai. I feel like this N-Line Premium model would be aimed at maybe the younger buyer who wants a bit of sporty styling, lots of gadgets and tech and features before kids come along, because it's not really a car that you could put kid seats in and they'd be comfortable. It would be real squash for like a proper family car. Well, you might find the older generation that once the kids have left home don't need a big car but still want something sporty, would be attracted to it as well. So I think it does appeal to quite a few sort of different age groups, which is quite good. Just trying out the voice control system in this car, and I have to say it works really well. Simple press of a button brings out Siri on your iPhone. It understood exactly what I said, and yeah, there was no kind of, it didn't understand or it got it wrong or anything. That's quite impressive actually. I've been in plenty of cars but the voice control system is very average at best, but this is actually quite impressive. So that brings us to an end for the video for the Kona N-Line Premium. What I thought started out as being quite an expensive small car, when you actually sort of break it down and look at what equipment level you get, the fact that it's four-wheel drive, it's probably one of the most powerful engines in its class, it actually then starts to make a little bit of sense. So, if you've enjoyed the video, obviously give it a like, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell. If you've got any questions or would like to know a bit more information about this car, please feel free to leave them in the comments section below for me and I'll come back to you as soon as I can. I hope you've enjoyed the video. I look forward to seeing you all in the next one.